Goes fast. So as you're coming in, if you would put in the chat where you're viewing from. This has been so fun this year, even though we can't be together. We have folks from all over the state and other states and even other countries occasionally. So please tell us where you're viewing from in the chat and tell us the funnest bird you saw this week. What was the coolest thing you saw? All right. All right, I'm going to put it in. All right. Elena Stark in Sarasota saw a single swallow today over her house. That is so fun. Wonderful. Meredith in McKinley from Bradenton. Michelle Mizart, Sarasota, saw a swallowtail kite this morning. Darlene Faugust, Green Bay, Wisconsin. All right, and she saw a yellow warbler. Awesome. Judith in Sarasota saw a scissor-tailed kite over Geneva. Geneva what? That's cool. Beverly Wasinski, Warrington, PA, a red-winged blackbird. Oh, early, isn't it? Cool. Lou Sharp from Libertyville, Illinois, saw a house finch at his feeder. Great. Cindy and Steve from Maine, 2 broad-winged hawks, circling overhead and calling. Oh, how fun is that? The Blue Mountains of Ontario. Pauline saw 13 common and red-breasted mergansers on Georgian Bay. Lovely. Sheila Fagan from Nokomis saw an eagle in the tree in her front yard. Lucky you. Let's see. Phyllis Ross in North Bethesda. Barbara Ryan in Herbert, Michigan, hummingbirds. Mark Davis, Longboat Key, great crested flycatcher. Oh, aren't they fun? Jean, oh, Jean saw a coyote right outside her window, right in Sarasota in the meadows. Good for you. And for those of you who don't know, coyotes are not interested in people, so you don't have to worry about them. Judith, oh, Beneva. Okay, Judith saw the mergansers on Beneva. Thank you. Stan Orsi from Maine saw a nice male wood duck. Lovely. They are wonderful. Susan Houston from Venice saw 15 frigate birds off her deck over Lemon Bay. How wonderful. Elizabeth and Carl Nurek. Carl saw 2 baby woodpeckers. Oh, how fun, fledging. Joanne Ephraimian, Sarasota, great blue herons and egrets. They're always fun. All right, wonderful. 7:02, we have 64 attendees. We'll give them another minute. Patty Haynes in Northport, but she goes to Northern Lake George in the summer. Margie owes me from the Western Spindales a couple of years ago.
In Miami.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we're up to 65 now. Wonderful. Thank you all for coming. I will give you a first, just a background on Zoom. I'm Karen Willey, and I'm your Zoom moderator. And we will be, this is a webinar, as we usually do, so you can only see the panelists. That doesn't mean anything's wrong with your computer. We will be taking questions by the Q&A. If you would put any questions for Margie at any point during her talk in the Q&A, then at the end, we will be looking at that for, and she will be answering your questions. You can also put any logistical things you might need in the chat. I'll be monitoring both. But if you have questions for Margie, it's easier for us to follow in the Q&A. Okay, and that's about it. And I'm gonna turn it over to Jean.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's always wonderful to have a crowd of people. And I want to thank all of you, but I'm going to list some functions that I think were really worthy of a shout out. I really want to thank everybody for helping to make this year work. As you know, it's been difficult for all of us, different actually. So, but somehow or another, we pulled it all together, and because of you, because of all of our members, we've been able to do it. And in spite of COVID, we've been able to keep in touch with all of you via the Brown Pelican, WhatsApp, the eBloss, and of course, all our Zoom presentations were so ably organized and facilitated by Karen. Thank you very much, Karen. I also want to thank people who've been doing the things that they've kept going, doing some of their volunteer things in spite of COVID. And one group I want to thank is the Palmer Boulevard cleanup crew, who kept on with all of their cleanup schedule in spite of COVID. So thank you, Joanna Bear and your group. I also want to thank the bird naturalists who represented us all on the boardwalks for most of the year. Thank you, Helen King, for organizing that and keeping that schedule going. It's been wonderful that you've all been out there. I also want to thank all of the volunteers who kept the gardens tended and the bird feeders stocked. That's you, Andy Schneider, for stocking the feeders. Thank you for that. To Margi Haas for scheduling and hosting all the speakers, including the additional speakers that we've had organized. I want to thank Sherry Rose for her inaugural year as the Brown Pelican editor. She's done a great job of that. I also want to thank the board of directors for guiding us all through this challenging year. We've had our meetings via Zoom all year long, and the board has been incredibly supportive, helpful, and so on. And we couldn't do it without them. And last but not least, all of our members and friends who donated their time and money to keep us afloat and in good working order. A big, big thank you to all of you. So I will see you later, but right now I'm going to turn you back to Karen, who's taking the show. Go ahead, Karen.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so tonight I want to, am I muted? No, okay. Okay, so tonight Margi is switching roles from program director to presenter. And Margi Haas ran her own executive recruiting firm in Tokyo and New York City for many years. She moved to Sarasota over 6 years ago. And although she still pursues her career in counseling, she has also become an avid birder and ardent conservationist since moving to Florida. Margi has developed a special research interest in swallowtail kites, which she has observed locally now for almost 5 years as a citizen scientist, reporting her results to ARCI, the Avian Research and Conservation Institute in Gainesville. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Margi Haas.
Thank you.
And she's going to share her screen.
Good to be reminded. There we go.
Yes, it looks great.
Okay, great. So thank you all. It's always a pleasure to talk about swallowtail kites, America's beautiful hawk. And this bird, it's just amazing to me. You know, you can get American ornithologists to wax poetic about this bird. It's just the number of people who have wonderful things to say about it. It's truly a gorgeous flying bird. In fact, if you don't know it, if you haven't seen it, it's probably because you have to look way up often to see them, and they fly very, very fast. So as you can see on the screen, this is an adult photo of an adult taken in my neighborhood several years ago. It's got that deep forked tail. It's about 2 feet in length and its wingspan is about 4 feet. And from underneath, it's white, except when you really get to its wings. And if you look at it from above, it's a beautiful kind of dark black blue and a lighter kind of like almost like shawl of blue around the back of its neck, the wing part. And let's see, there's so much I can say. I've got to get going here. So this is where they are right now. And I'm going to show you. They're called kites because there are a number of species of kites worldwide. And paper kites.
Excuse me, are you still on your first slide?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right, okay, sorry, go ahead.
And kites are the paper kite was named after the bird. And this is a photo taken in my neighborhood, and a storm is brewing. There's enormous winds, and the kites are just addicted to the wind. I think they live to fly. Their joy is to fly, and a strong wind is nothing to them. They're actually trying to hang on here because of the storm is coming, but they'll be fine when they let go. And in fact, they do later after I took this photo. But you can see this to me is a kind of kiting they do. And you could also say they kite because they stay stationary in the sky and don't seem to move their wings at all, like a paper kite would do. And here is a video of them flying. It's about 25 kites. Again, in my neighborhood, they're calling. And they're coming into roost. This is later afternoon. And they're very, very communal birds. So you may have seen one or two, but as the season goes on, especially, they like to collect and fly around together. You may not see that because actually they fly so high when they gather in their groups. Whoops, sorry. So swallowtail kites are here only half of the year, here meaning North America. You can see in this map that they concentrate now primarily in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Louisiana, some into Texas. Originally, they covered the whole the eastern half of the United States. And 200 years ago, people talked about seeing them in their backyard in Connecticut. Times have changed, and you can ask me why, more about that if you want to know later. They are here roughly from the very beginning of March into late July, August, early August. Then they fly south over the Gulf, over the water into South America. And they're here another half of the year where there are also a very similar kind of swallowtail kite, a subspecies that never leaves South America. And then as the mating urge comes upon them, they travel back, and they don't travel in groups. They don't travel with their mates or with their kids from the previous year necessarily, but they fly back into Florida and back into the very areas where they nested, often into the same nests if they're there as the previous year. So one of the things that just amazes me, and it's almost a little off topic here, but why do they bother to come to the United States just to mate, have their kids, raise their kids, and then the kids separately fly back with the adults to South America? Why don't they just stay in South America? But it's wonderful for us, of course, that they do stay. They do come here for half of the year. So how did I get involved in all this? Some of you may have heard this story. It was a stunning one for me. And the reason why I I've learned so much about them. One day in 2016, in early July, I was in my backyard and it was early evening and a whole bunch of kites flew very low over the roof of my house. And I grabbed my binoculars and camera and flew out the front door. And this is what I saw. This is my neighbor's roof, and behind it, the kites were perched in a tree. I'd never seen them perched anywhere. I'd only seen two briefly one time before. It's another view and another view. And as a good birder, I was counting them, which is not easy to do. And they were calling. This is an adult kite calling. And sun was setting, so we went around. I had my partner Leslie with me, who was also taking photos. We could see better on the other side, and this is one of my favorite photos, actually taken by Leslie, of a perched kite. Just gorgeous, gorgeous bird, even perched. So as I say here, this was the beginning of my adventures, and I actually thought they were there just for that one night, so I was frantically taking photos until it went to dark. But they came back almost every night that summer, July and August, and then they continued to do so every year. And I'll tell you more about this tree and these place that they came later in my talk. So again, swallowtail kites are here in North America to nest and raise their young, and then to forage around on the wing and to roost in the treetops before they migrate. So once I found this roost and reported it to RCI and Ken Meyer, who spoke to us earlier this year, he's such a good, if you will, salesman for research, and salesperson for research. And he said, all right, Margie, now you found the pre-migratory roosts, but where are the nests? You have to find the nests now. And he had no idea, I had no idea what a mandate that would become in my kite adventures. So they came back the next spring, and it was like March to June. Oh my gosh, where are they in my neighborhood? Where do they nest in Sarasota and Manatee counties? I talked to Jean, I talked to Catherine Young, and people were telling me, and oh, don't tell anyone else, but this is this and this is that. And it was a very big challenge for me. But let me show you what I was trying to find. So this is Carlton Reserve in Venice. As some of you, maybe many of you know, it's on the east side of 75. And I spent several summers here looking very actively for kites. So can you see the nest in this photo? It's, I'll put my cursor, it's there. These are photos I took. A little closer, see that speck of white? That's a breast on a nesting kite. And here's another nest. And these are all slash pines, and that's a typical, oh, I don't know, flatland in Carlton. And nest is sort of at the very top here. So this is a nesting kite. Incubation, as I say, is done by both parents for 27 to 33 days, roughly a month. And in my observations, I found that kites switch off. This is a nest here. This is again at Carlton. And I'm going to show you a sequence of, this is the mate over here in the sky. And he or she is flying in for nest duty. Flying closer, closer. And here they are together, and they move so quickly. When I say they were there together and probably had a sweet moment, it was literally a moment. They move so quickly. And here's the one relieved of duty popping off the nest. And this is another nest. This is a kite that they just switched places, and this one flew in with dinner. I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure I want to know, but that's the eat-in dinner that he or she brought with them. So when the chicks first hatch, you can't see them. They say they make noise sometimes, but I've never heard that. Anyway, this is a mother kite, probably, dangling an enticing pair of frog's legs while the father's off hunting. Now, this is my first view of a kite nest, and some of you know Stephanie Green, who is a wonderful birder who was here for many years and is now actually in, I think, northern Mississippi, working for Audubon. And I got so challenged to find a kite nest that I implored her one day when we were looking at bobolinks at Silvery Field, Stephanie, please help me, show me a nest. So she took me to see a nest, and that's actually probably how I got my close contact with Carlton Reserve. So this is a nesting pair, and the kite on the left has just zoomed in, and I presume it's the male, and he brought the nesting female a frog. And most likely, this is a nest that's very high. We don't know for sure, but most likely there were young chicks in that nest. Too young again to be seen yet. And I went back with my partner a week later, and I'm very, very sad to say that there was nothing there. And a friend of mine walked around that tree and reported to me years later that there were feathers around the tree. So I believe this nest was predated by probably a great horned owl. And by that, I mean probably the horned owl attacked the nesting kite and the babies and ate them. So it was another year before I really got serious about finding my own nests. And I wrote Debbie Blanca, who was then land manager and my boss, kind of. I always view her as my boss in Carlton. And I with some trepidation, I said, you know, I'll help you find kite nests. Frankly, I don't think I knew what I didn't know what I was doing, but she sent me this little map and said, you know, these hikers said they saw some kites. Why don't you go check out this location? Well, checking the maps, this location was 40 minutes into really the wilderness of Florida. And it was my first expedition into the wilderness. I implored my now deceased friend, Scott Dingman, please come with me. I don't know what I'm doing. He said, well, I won't know either. Anyway, we blithered along this trail. Leslie's laughing in the background, my partner. We blithered along this trail. And and I had this map, but I couldn't even talk to Debbie. She happened to be not there for the day. So I took it as a good omen. We started out and a kite came right to me, really low, and didn't fly at me, but just like, hi, honey. Anyway, I walked the trail and suddenly I saw this nest here. And it wasn't the nest or the area, I mean, it was the general area, but it wasn't any nest Debbie didn't tell me about this nest. In fact, I am proud to say I discovered this nest. And this is what it looks like closer. And you can see the nesting kite and the two chicks. And here's even closer. I blew this photo up. And Scott goes, how did you do that? I said, I have no idea. Honest to gosh, I think it was pure intention. Anyway, this is the older kite here that you can see a little better in the younger kite. And the parent wondering, what am I doing there? And I write here, a hatched kite fledges in about 40 days. Fledges means leaves the nest. And this is another photo from that day. And RCI's Gina Kent, who was one of my mentors, goes, oh, Margie, look at the crop on that bird. I had to look up crop. I mean, I knew what it was technically, but this is the crop, the swollen area here. And she said, oh, he or she's so healthy. And those eyes are typical for a young kite. They're kind of bug-eyed looking. Here's the 7 days later, or not actually 7, a few days later, the chick now, the older chick is over 2 weeks old, as I say here, and it's starting to sprout its adult black feathers. And here is a view of the older chick, not such a good view, but I put this photo in because you can see the younger chick. You can see the eye of the mother, and you can see, actually, what's sweet about this photo is you can see the beginning of the marvelous swallowtail, the forked tail, just the tip of it there. This is the last view I have of this younger kite, and I'll tell you why. Here's some other views of the older chick. So I went back a week later. And as I say here, the older chick is now 3.5 weeks old. And it was so different. This was an amazing nest. I was actually very fortunate. I could walk right under it. And it wasn't in any place where anyone else would ever see what I was doing. I actually had to stand back from it to see the actual activity in the nest. So this is what I saw when I came up. And in that, you know, it doesn't look so much like a chick anymore. It looked more like a young bird. And when I took a close-up, first I was like, well, where's the parent? And I didn't know that much about nesting habits, but it was right that the parent wasn't there. About 3 weeks, the parents more and more are not on the nest all the time. One is usually on the nest 2 or 3 weeks, probably to keep them from falling out. And also crows and other, especially crows, fish crows. I've got a different view of them. They could predate a young chick, I'm pretty sure, and steal it from the nest. So the parents are there until they're too big for most birds to steal them and take them off. But the real shock and revealed to me in this visit was, where was the younger chick? And I looked all around. I looked all around. And while I'd read about it, I couldn't believe it. This is an example of what they call siblicide. The older chick kills the younger chick. And apparently this can be rather common in hawk behavior, but this is the first time I encountered it. And, you know, even so, I felt a little bit cranky about this kite. You know, what did he do to his mate? I mean, his nest mate. But anyway, he was really panting. He or she was really panting in the nest. It's very hot here, and that's just about this time now. You know, it's getting hot here now, so you can imagine there isn't much shade at that level of the nest. So I went back, and I kind of waited 10 days. I was a little nonplussed by the fact that one chick had gone missing. And I looked all around and I didn't see it. But I also had this kind of anxiety, like, oh no, what happened to my nest? Well, actually, you know, I did a lot of butterflying. I couldn't see it anywhere. And then it popped up. There's its head behind this branch here. It was there all along. I think it was just too hot. Took a long nap. So at this point, the kite can stand up in the nest. It may be hard to see here, and all of its fluffy down is gone. And this is a very important stage in chick development. And wow, if they got those wings, and you can see it's looking more and more like an adult. A little shaggy, but an adult, and a little dirty too, because it's been on that nest with all that pine tar. These are slash pines, but they're very sticky. And, you know, 1 minute they're calling and seeing their parents and grabbing food, and next minute they're conking out. And the yellow there is urine. And here she's starting to look rather handsome, I think, more as an adult kite. You can see some of the pin feathers are still filling out, the little white marks on the back, the black feathers. But I got kind of worried at this point, or not worried, but like, wow, I better start coming more often. And this was 40-minute drive to Carlton and a 40-minute hike in, and then reverse to go visit the nest. But this was like my nest, so I wasn't gonna miss vital stages here. So 3 days later, I'm back. I think this was Memorial Day, and more views of the chick. And you can see its big feet, they don't have long legs. They're not easily banded on their legs, but they've got really kind of cute feet to me. This is looking like an adult scary hawk stretching. And this is a video taken of showing how excited they get when they see the parent coming with food. Notice it's calling from its throat. I always thought birds called from their beak, but that just shows that I didn't realize that if you really look at this video even, it's calling from its throat. Those are other birds in the background, but it sees its parent bringing something for it to eat. And one of the challenges at this point for me as a photographer is to get the delivery of the food in a video, or in a photo. I got the delivery made, but not the bearer of the frog. So I went back 3 days later, and now the chick is old enough to fledge. It's between 38 and 40 days old, and it's 3 feet out of its nest. And it's funny how you get in habits of watching things from a certain angle. So I was at my same old angle, which seemed the best for getting nest photography, but it was hard to get a good view of the kite here. It's sort of wedged into 2 branches. There's another view of it. And here comes a parent with a frog. Now, maybe this time I'll get it in my camera view and could show you all. Well, I got sort of close. This is the parent delivering the frog, but now I have the fledgling, or almost fledgling, with its rear to us. That doesn't work too well. And the adult fed the frog to the rear-ended fledgling. So you have to take my word that the adult fed the chick. So like the chick, I decided eventually to get a new vantage point. This was just a little bit later that day, and you can see how much clearer I can show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is, to me, is a really important video in terms of watching kites being fed. Whoops, I want to stop this just to explain it for a minute. Watch closely. Kites move very, very fast. When the adult feeds this chick, it's going to be zoom, zoom out. And the kite you see flying around the edges of the screen is the parent. And the parent is zeroing in and navigating the branches, getting to the nest. Now the nest here, whoops, sorry. The nest is here. And you're going to watch the adult fly in here and deal with the food and then swing around and feed the chick. So here's the excited chick. Oh, food, food, food. Now it's looking to the left because the adult is going to fly in here. fact, it may have already, there, just flew into the nest and it's butchering something. I don't want to think about what it is. And it's going to swing around and feed the chick. So watch closely here. That's the adult calling. And it'll zoom across the top of the screen there. This is sort of cleaning its bill after it's had its bit of whatever. Here's another view, just a little bit later that afternoon. So I went back 3 days later and the chick had left. It wasn't anywhere I could find. And that's my shadow, trying to figure out, this is the nest here. And I walked all over the place, looked all over the sky. I just couldn't find it anywhere. So that was the end of my following of a single kite nest in 2018. So the following year, which was actually, early April to late June 2019, I volunteered. I guess I'd really earned my legitimate spurs as a kite viewer, a kite nest checker. And I worked with Debbie Blanco, who ran Carlton Reserve, and Charlie Sample, who started Venice Audubon originally. And Debbie Blanco found 6 nests. I didn't find any of these nests, but I surveyed them every week, mostly with Charlie in my SUV or his SUV. We got special privileges to drive around and open gates and see where the nests were, and then see whether there was 1 or 2 and how are they doing? Did the nest succeed or not? All of that. And it was a fascinating experience, and I learned so much about looking at nests and looking at kites, looking at swallowtail kites. And Carlton is such a wonderful place anyway. And by the end of the season, I wasn't sure how many kites we'd actually seen, or even how many nests we'd seen. It's a dense, it's a very wild area with many areas of dense trees, and it's really hard to know where the nests were. But it was really quite a challenge and fun to watch them all through the season. And as I say here, at the end of the season, I saw 2 more fledge kites flying with their parents. So we missed some of the nests for sure, although I don't know where that nest was. This was a highlight, maybe the highlight of this experience for me in 2019. This is a view of the deep wilds of Carlton. And this is a strand of slash pines. And the nest that I was challenging myself to go check out is somewhere around here. And the area in front of it was dry when I took this photo, but it can turn very marshy. This is not a road in front. This is a path, and it can get deeply rutted. And even Debbie Blanco, who ran the place, could get her truck stuck there. So it was a real challenge to get out there in the first place. And I just decided this was a fun challenge, and boy, was it. It was fun and quite a challenge. So Debbie had gone, and this Sarasota, the Kite Sarasota, had a transmitter. So that's why I wanted to find this nest in the deep wilderness. And Debbie Blanco had checked the transmitter data and found the nest, and it's marked with this orange band. And in front of it, when you see this sort of blurry green stuff, it's about shoulder height, and it's palmetto and berry bushes and it's really thick. And oh my gosh, you mean I got to walk into that stuff? That was really like, wow, there must be snakes. What's in there? Anyway, I did navigate that and had to be in touch with Debbie by cell phone, who was supervising a burn in a different area. But this is the nest of Sarasota and its mate. And again, I say it's up really high in this pine. And when I took this photo, the baby was too young to be seen. And this is the kite with the transmitter, Sarasota. And the transmitter is here. And he's either probably flying to that nest and his nest mate delivering food for his mate and for the unseen chick. Now, I'd like to dedicate the energy from this talk today to the memory of Sarasota the kite. This kite perished in fall last year on its southbound leg of migration, probably to Brazil. It made it successfully over the Gulf, and then RCI lost touch with the transmissions, and it's presumed it's because he died in the Andes. And it's possible that, the transmitter fell off, but I don't think there are any cases of that ever happening. So God rest all of the kites that perish and all of the birds that perish in migration, of which there are many. And I had a special fondness for this bird because we were always looking for him in Carlton Reserve. So this is coming back to happier times. This is his chick. Don't know the gender. And this is a video. I'm sorry, I gotta get this going. This is a video showing the nest, and I pull back. The kite here the chick is about between 3 and 4 weeks old. And I pull back to show you how high up and how far back, and just like, whoa, where is this nest? And this is a very cool area. There are red-headed woodpeckers, Bachman sparrows, eastern towhees, calling all around as a reward for standing in the, I assume it's a reward for standing in the palmetto, which could be tricky to get through, which is below here. You can see it vaguely, and then I go back up to the tree. I'm standing there with my tripod. And I wore a hat one day, like a broad brim hat, and some kites that were here, maybe Sarasota and his mate, dive bombed me. They were like, hey, we don't like people with big hats around our area. As long as I wore just a baseball cap, I was fine. But anyway, so here you get this view of the chick. So I had grandiose plans for doing videos to show you what it would be like when Sarasota's chick fledged. I was just so psyched about this, and the timing wasn't right, and it started to rain and rain and rain. And Debbie said, no, you can't go out there. I can't even go out there in my truck. And finally we went out to try to see where this chick was and had it fledged. And by the time we got there, it was gone. I'm sure it successfully fledged, but my great plans for showing a fledging kite, and especially Sarasota's chick, totally bombed. So what happens after they leave the nest? This was still somewhat of a mystery to me. And thanks to Andy and Celery Fields, I got word from Andy, wow, there are kites here, come and see them. So when I got there, and this was just a little bit later, but you can see it's the very end of July into early August. This is an adult kite flying down the hill toward the nature center. And this kite and its mate have two very demanding juvenile fledglings. Fledglings means, in this case, they're already flying around. And the parents are very busy. They can fly, And they're not great hunters yet. So the parents have got to work hard to feed them. They're just learning to really hunt for themselves at celery fields on the celery hill. So this is a video, no, I'm sorry, this is a picture of the adult with the frog and the two frantic fledglings. And they're obviously arguing over who will get the frog. Now this is a video taken an extremely windy day with the two fledglings frantic to get the food from the parent and the parent having quite a time navigating the wind. You can also see in this the tremendous dexterity with which the adult there, how it flies. It's just an amazing flyer. It's so windy and it's trying to navigate to get back to them and actually feed one of them. It doesn't succeed. It's circling around. It's just so windy, as you can hear. And you've got two frantic kids there. Feed me, feed me, feed me. And it's circling way off and trying to come back and navigate the wind. What? And again, very quickly, it succeeds. So here's some other views from celery fields. The adult is here. The two demanding chicks or fledglings. This is just a short video of one of the fledglings begging. They kind of beg all through they probably beg even in South America when they find any adult that will feed them. So now it's pre-migratory roost time. And this is, again, where I first saw kites in my neighborhood. And what I mean by pre-migratory roosts is that after they raise their young here in Florida or wherever they're nesting here, and before they migrate, they love to travel. And because they love to fly, they literally could be flying around visiting all kinds of different places. And the way they do that, I mean, if you think about it, it's like they just fly up in the air and see kites flying around. And if they're zooming by, they join them. And then they join those kites and go to their roost for the night. And as a result of this, kites can travel very far. And in fact, sometimes you'll see late migrating kites come from Colorado, Ontario, Canada, Michigan. They're usually single birds with probably an enormous amount of energy, but they can fly very far and often do. So they tend, as I write here, they tend to remember these places and return to them year in, year out. And in fact, a friend of mine says this year, when kites returned to the migratory roost in my neighborhood, she saw them coming right to the roost tree, the first kite she saw back in our neighborhood this spring. So this is an example of a big pre-migratory roost west of Lake Okeechobee. Maybe, I don't know, maybe 200 kites there. This is just a part of the biggest roost. But don't think because you're seeing them all roosting that they're gonna fly in a herd at one point. It's more like they just love hanging out together, flying together, and some will go north from here. Some will go south, some might come here to Sarasota. It isn't that they're all congregating and gonna go zooming south at the same time, the same way at all. So this is, again, a view of my neighborhood roost tree right across the street from where I lived with 44 kites. Again, congregating for the heck of it, pre-migratory. This is just a view of my neighborhood and where they fly around. We can skip this one really. And so for 6 weeks before they migrate, they're flying in from the east in my neighborhood and roosting here most nights. And this is super kite. The sun caught this kite just at the right angle. And their roost in my neighborhood, again, centers around this one tree. And this tree is probably an old growth tree, by which I mean it's been around forever. And the bark is very smooth. It's very tall tree, and it's a long leaf pine tree. It's not a slash pine like in Carlton. And it looks kind of funky with the branches, but longleaf pines self-prune, so it can have dangling branches and be very healthy. So this is a video of them coming into roost in this tree. That high-pitched calling are the juvenile kites asking to be fed. They're begging, and they'll even beg from adults when they're flying around in the air right near the tree. The deeper call is the adult. That galloping call is also the adult. And they're collecting in that tree to preen, to sleep. Some bring in food that they don't like to share. But the kite is the fledgling kites are ever hopeful that they'll be fed. Okay, this is a fledgling, a juvenile now really. Oh, will some adult please feed me? Will you feed me? Flies out again. It's coming back. Will you feed me? And it could be its parents, but if it's an adult, any functioning adult is assumed can feed him. So they also gather, they'll either gather in that tree I showed you, they'll also gather in the cypress trees, which are very near here. And they just pile in together. You know, they land practically one on top of another. The more the merrier, the closer the merrier. So again, as I've said, kites are communal birds, unlike most raptors. And this is, they love hanging out together. This is back in that tall pine tree. This is them in the rain, and gosh knows how many are on that right side. They're all piled together, all kind of dripping wet. Now in the morning, they're not such early risers. They'll leave a tree in the shade and then fly to a tree together in the sun to kind of bake so that they get the dew off their wings. And then also, they'll wait for the thermals to rise. And they're such exquisite flyers that really, the drier their wings are, of course, the better they can fly. Pardon me, they can fly. So this is just a scene of a kite here, pardon me, that flew in with a wasp's nest. Now this is a gigantic delicacy, which you can probably tell by the expressions on all of these kite faces. You mean you're not going to share this? And there's this one, maybe this is juvenile, frantic, like, oh my God, how come I can't have some of that? This is a gigantic delicacy, which this kite does not share. They love thunder and lightning, and they love thunderstorms, lightning storms. This is a very scary storm with no rain, lots of wind. When Leslie and I took this photo, oops, I'm sorry, let me just get back to that. When we took this photo, this lightning was so scary that we hung under the portico and then snap a photo and jump back under the portico. To me, they're like wind storm ballet dancers. They love, love, love the wind. This was again, another windstorm. Absolutely no rain, just the wind. And they're calling. So I put this photo in here because this is that beacon tree, that old growth tree in my neighborhood. And the more I looked at this tree and thought about it, the more I realized maybe this is obvious, but kites, I think, have nested and roosted here forever. And I really mean forever. So when we cut down any tree, especially an old growth tree, or any tree in an area where there are few trees or trees that are obviously really important to the birds in the neighborhood, we threaten the whole microcosm of that community of birds. And this, you can see there's another bird here. I think it's a black-bellied whistling duck, but it's so important to preserve as many trees as we can. So July, August, they leave for South America. So what happens more recently? Well, I was rewarded. I'd like to think that the goddess of the earth or Mother Earth, or I don't know, the kite goddess brought nests or finally guided me to find nests in my very own neighborhood. This was a long time coming for me. But last spring, just over a year ago, I finally found 2 kite nests in my neighborhood. And here are some views. Oh, there are 2 different nests, one on the left, one on the right. And the one on the left fledged 2 kites, and the one on the right fledged 1. And I don't know what the fledgling on the right has in its mouth. Could be a stink bug. Now, watching the nest so closely in my own neighborhood was an amazing experience for me last spring, actually early summer. And I was just amazed that no matter where, the fledglings drop out of the nest and those nests are really high up. And no matter where their fledgling goes, they can figure out where they are. In fact, I could figure out where the fledglings were because I kept following the parents, and the fledglings would call. And this is the fledgling here in the lower branches of its nest tree, and here it is. But it's really hard to find. And here it is, looking around for its parents, and they've been bringing him food, bringing him or her food, and they're like 2 dead frogs there, and it's like, I just want to get out of here. And the only way it's going to get out is to fly. So eventually it breaks free, and the 2 adults are on the here and here, and this is the fledgling finally flying, and it's a fascinating experience to watch them. And because I knew where their nests were and what directions they were coming from, I'm very happy to say I could see, oh, that's the chick I'd been following in the nest, and now it's a fledgling flying. So the other nest had 2 chicks. One was like, oh, I'd say 10 days younger than the other. And the older one took off and come back to the nest, take off, come back. And they finally left the nest together for good when the younger one fledged. So not all siblings kill one another. And this is an example, right? I'm watching one of the nests where this did not happen. They seem very bonded. And they flew into this tree across the street from their nest. And you can see this is the whole local community of kites gathering. It's like they assume a kind of a roosting community that includes the fledglings, and the two fledglings that have just left the nest for the first time together are right here. So just to conclude here, these are just several photos from this year. Both pairs of adults returned to the same nest that they'd used the previous year. So this is the adult up here and the two chicks in the one nest, and this one down below is very, very young. And this is the other nest that also has two chicks this year. And the parent is feeding one. And if you can see, this is the other chick with its beak open. I'm ready. Feed me next. Feed me next. And this was taken just yesterday. I'm not sure you can see how the adults in the middle of the two of them, how much they've grown, but there's lots of black pin feathers. And if they were to stretch their wings, you could see it all, but it's hard to show in a photo easily. But they're growing up very, very fast. In fact, it's stunning how fast they grow up, in my opinion. So that concludes my talk, and I welcome questions. Just to hear the credits.
Well, thank you, Margie. This is fantastic. Look up in the sky. We will be looking for sure. So we do have a few questions.
Great.
So Sheila Fagan asks, any tips for locating a swallowtail kite nest?
I'm sorry, can you ask me again, what?
Any tips for locating a kite nest?
Yes, I don't mean this lightly. A lot of it's experience. You really have to, look and look. I found our local nests by standing in an open field and watching where they were going toward the end of the day or the beginning of the day. And that's really how I was able to do that.
Now, are they always in the pines, the tall pines?
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of this screen for us.
Oh, hit and stop share at the top.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So my question related to that is, are they always in the pines?
Not usually, yes. And they're either in slash pines in wetter areas, I think, and long pines, longleaf pines, and sometimes in cypress trees. But cypress trees are much less stable. But the best way to find kites and their nests are to stand like an open field, an open area of a golf course where you see them flying overhead, maybe like in the meadows or somewhere like that, and watch where they drop down. But they drop really quickly. And what you're watching is the adult not on the nest, zooming in to drop food for the nesting kite, the adult. So okay. You can watch them zoom in and out. And that's how I found my first nest. And then intention. And I don't mean that lightly. Pure intention. I'm going to do this. I'm going to find a nest. I don't know how.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so Patricia Rockwood asks, do they return to the same nests every year?
Yes, they can. Not always. That nest I showed you first, the nest I'm so proud I discovered on my own, they didn't come back to. And I don't blame them. I think people found out from other people that I found that nest, and I think they decided this was not a safe place to return to. But if it's secluded, and the nests here, I think, have been active for 5 or 6 years.
Cool.
But it's really important with nests to, if you know a nest, don't show many people.
Mm-hmm.
Jean and I and other people can tell you that once people know about them, it can drive the nesting kites crazy, and they will try to dive bomb you sometimes. They don't want you nearby. I don't know, I'm very lucky in that regard, but maybe they're used to seeing this weirdo with a camera watching them.
Pauline says, loved your presentation. How long before fledglings can hunt for themselves?
Well, you could see in those videos at Celery Fields, I kind of breezed over the last one mini video of the chick taking off. It was going off to hunt for itself. So they have to be able to hunt by the time they leave Florida, i.e. before they go over the Gulf. In fact, they probably can feed themselves pretty early on once they leave the nest, but they don't have that instinct to get all of the food they could once they're experienced hunters. So they rely on their parents more than they need to. And the parents also want to make sure they're well fed and well fattened, because they use a lot of fat in flying over the Gulf.
Yeah, good point.
And they do not fly with their parents. It's amazing.
Okay, we have a question from Meredith in the chat. She says, amazing, and thank you for sharing your passion. I seldom see frogs. Do the kites dive for frogs?
No, they're tree frogs. And there are lots and lots of frogs. In fact, frogs are a major part of their diet once they've left the nest. I see lots of challenging things that they bring back to the nest. I'm afraid, I mean, it's well known that they bring back nestlings of other bird species. And I've seen them bring some baby bird and do a great job of dissecting it before my very camera.
Okay, so I have a question. I want to go back to your reduced range. Why did they reduce their range to only the Gulf states? Because you mentioned Connecticut 100 years ago.
You know, I think there are obvious answers and perhaps not such obvious answers. Obviously, there's been an enormous amount of clear cutting. You know, if we read accounts even of when the Pilgrims came, and all the trees that were there, and all the cutting down of trees, that it's just really hard to find areas where they could nest. I think there's other reasons that we may not really understand, because they used to be all over the eastern half of the United States. And to read a guy in Connecticut in a journal saying, you know, they're in my backyard in Connecticut was like, wow. So I think also for a while, you know, they shoot look at Audubon and all those people. Not that they had much choice because nobody could really buy binoculars, but they were all shooting birds all the time. And I think the kite is, there's a real problem even now that people like to shoot them because they're great targets. So I don't know how much that's a factor here either. But they apparently, I think their population is increasing slightly now. But I don't honestly know. I think there are things we don't know about kites yet. But clear cutting anywhere, please, please, wherever you see trees being cut down. In Sarasota, it's getting to be a horrible, it's getting to be super, you know, we'll lose so many of the nesting birds, including the kites, if we cut down old growth trees or any trees.
All right. Well, thanks, Margie. That was fantastic. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I should just say, and talking about trees, excuse me, very briefly in conclusion, a lot of them nest very near houses. So you don't necessarily, you don't have to go to Carlton Reserve if you're in a wooded area or little forested area, you can often find them down the street in the forested area where you live. So I encourage you to all go out and look and enjoy yourself.
You did, right? Great.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, turn it back to Jean.
Okay. Thank you, Margie. That was really wonderful.
You're welcome.
I must say that in my own experience, once I found or somebody found a nest in a neighborhood nearby, and we went to look at it, and there were a few photographers with us. That they were very respectful, but under the tree there were about 4 or 5 of us. And the next thing we knew, the next day, they had actually abandoned that nest. So our conclusion was that once you find the nest, they're very, very skittish. So if you ever do find a nest, please don't broadcast it. Do not put the location out there, because otherwise you really we might be in a position of losing that. So we absolutely don't want that. So I do believe that they are increasing. I read somewhere today, Margie, the American Bird Conservancies did say that they were actually increasing in numbers. Isn't that wonderful?
Oh, I mean, it's great news.
It certainly is great news. So, well, thanks everybody for joining us tonight and this year. Thank you all for coming and supporting everything that we do. And we are planning on opening the Nature Center in October. You know, we'll keep our fingers crossed, but that's a plan. That's what we're going to work towards this year. And we'll be sending out periodic e-blasts during this summer to keep you informed as to what's happening. But in the meantime, have a wonderful summer. Please stay safe and well, and return to Sarasota and our Nature Center. We'll see you in October.
And just one thing, and please, if you have ideas for speakers for next year, by all means, go on the website and email me via Sarasota Audubon's website with your ideas, and I'll look into them.
So that would be.
By the way, let me just, sorry, Karen, let me just reiterate or say that we don't know whether we will have, as you know, we have our general meetings in the church hall. Seems we got all fuzzy there. And we don't know if we will be having those meetings. We are considering, if we do have live meetings in the church hall, to actually Zoom them as well, so that many of you who don't come to the church hall, some of you don't like to travel at night, etc., and then we can have a broader audience, of course. So we are considering those possibilities. So keep abreast as we become more and more technically sophisticated. Okay, thanks. Karen, back to you. Good night, everybody.
All right, so yeah, there was just had a question about, will this be available? Somebody missed the beginning. And all of our programs are available. It will be up tomorrow on our YouTube site. You can find any of our videos from past programs on the meeting page. So go to the SarasotaAudubon.org, click on Activities tab at the top, and then Meetings, and scroll down and find the one you want, and the links are all there. So you can see anything you might have missed throughout the year. So that'll keep you busy over the summer. And we will continue, the Brown Pelican is done for the season, but we will continue the What's Up monthly newsletter throughout the summer. So look forward to that. And we'll be sending one out this Friday as well. So, all right, it's been a great year. Anything else? All right, info at SarasotaAudubon.org if you have ideas for Margie for speakers next year. Okay, good night all.
Good
night, everybody.
night.